I recognize Rep. Sablan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome back, Mr. Castro.
Thank you, Congresswoman.
What experience, if any, do you have in reviewing grant applications for the distribution of public funds?
I was once an employee for the Department of Education's Federal Grants Division. I was once
Guam?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I was once a member of a regional planning body in a variety of areas for the territory of Guam. And I guess officially that would be it. And so I've had experiences in both of those capacities.
Okay, and you actually sifted through grant applications, reviewed the grants, and made recommendations for whether to approve?
In those capacities, ma'am?
Mhm.
No. I've had exposure and participated in various capacities, but never to recommend for approval to the best of my recollection, ma'am.
But did you evaluate those applications?
Can I take them separately? So in the Department of Education, I don't recall being in a position to approve. What I do remember is being part of a team that authored the corrective action plan at the time, which addressed certain things within the consolidated grant. Within the regional planning body, I was in no position to approve anything to the best of my knowledge, but I was aware because these grants would come through. So I was privy to and made aware of, but never was in a position of authority over these grants to the best of my knowledge and ability. I mean, recollection, sorry, not ability.
Okay. So you were reviewing the applications of the department that you worked for, applications for funds, not receiving applications from other individuals or other entities.
I was reviewing, yes, I had access to, and I did read subgrants for entities that received federal grants under Title 5A. Yes, I reviewed those grants.
Okay. Were there standard rubrics that were applied in those cases?
In some cases, yes.
For federal funds, for federal grant funds, were there standard rubrics that were applied in your experience?
At different levels, yes.
Okay. And are you aware of evaluations or ratings of grant applications having been recorded?
Yes, in more than one instance in those capacities, yes.
Okay. And there were deadlines that applied as well, right, for grant applications?
The standard, yes, the answer is yes.
Okay. And typically for a grant application period, that deadline was announced and the total amount of grants, grant monies available would also have been announced.
Yes.
Okay, so you are familiar with the grant application process in general?
Yes.
Okay. Why would none of those standards have applied in the case of the boost program?
Thank you. I'm a member of a panel. My role, as I understand it to be, would be to review these applications and participate in a deliberative process to recommend a list to the governor for
Yes,
approval.
we've heard you say that.
Thank you. I depend
But
on the.
why,
I don't know.
even with all your experience having reviewed grant applications for the distribution of public funds, would you not at any point as a review panelist have insisted on keeping a record of how you would evaluate each and every one of that you reviewed?
I rely on the Department of Finance and the Bank of Saipan as the administrator to ensure compliance with all applicable regulatory requirements on the use of these funds.
And are you saying then that the Department of Finance and the Bank of Saipan did not at any point require or request that there be a record kept of how applications were being evaluated?
I don't know. That would be best directed to either the administrator or the bank or the Department of
You,
Finance.
as a review panelist, were never asked by the Bank of Saipan or by the Department of Finance to keep a record of your evaluations?
I don't recall.
Now, as you have said in your previous testimony, you wear multiple hats, right? You're the chief of staff, you're the Boost Program review panelist, you were also the campaign manager for Governor Torres's reelection.
My testimony is that I'm a member of the panel to
Mhm.
review applications for the Boost program.
Right. You've explained your role as a review panelist, but Mr. Castro, the communications that are in the record show that you did much more than merely review applications. And we've seen some of these exhibits that point to that, right? Where you're instructing the bank to hold or release certain checks to certain individuals. What role were you holding? What hat were you wearing when you did that?
Thank you. I was communicating an action by the panel in my capacity as a member of the panel.
And did other panelists also get to instruct the bank to hold or release certain checks to certain individuals?
I don't know.
And you're also seen in the communications instructing the bank to adjust award amounts for certain individuals. What hat were you wearing when you did that?
In each of those two instances cited, I was acting on an action as agreed upon by the panel in my sole capacity as a member of the panel.
So if the panel said increase the award to 75,000 for this individual, you've reached a consensus. Is there a record of that consensus
Yes,
anywhere?
ma'am, we reached a consensus. I don't know if there's a record of consensus. I do not keep minutes to meetings.
Mhm. And in the communications, you're also seen approving Bank of Saipan's contracts with boost marketing firms. What hat were you wearing then?
I don't recall approving any contracts at any time.
Really?
I could state for the record, I do not have any authority, expenditure or otherwise. It's explicit in the grant. It's made known to me on numerous occasions that the expenditure authority is the Department of Finance and the administrator is the administering authority.
Right. So Bank of Saipan in the communications indicates that they had this unwritten understanding to advance payments to certain marketing businesses they had that there were boost contracts with, and that the Department of Finance would reimburse the Bank of Saipan for these contracts or for these invoices that were paid out. You had no role in that.
No, from time to time they would ask me to look at it if I would concur, but I have no approving authority. I don't recall.
So your role was to concur,
No, I was solicited. I don't have any approval authority.
right? But at times you would concur with the contracts.
I don't
You
recall.
received contract proposals. That's very clear in the record. Nonstop, nonstop corporation or whatever, nonstop communications. You received a contract proposal.
I believe I may have been copied it, ma'am, yes.
And when you say I approve, that's not an approval to sign, that's just a concurrence. Is that correct?
No, that is not a decision that has any weight whatsoever on the Boost program.
Did you at any time direct the Bank of Saipan to contract with any specific firms?
Not to the best. I don't recall.
Not for Nonstop?
I don't recall.
Not for Royal Soil?
I don't recall.
Friends First?
I'm sorry.
Friends First?
Is that a company?
Yes.
I don't recall.
Crank Industries?
Crank. I don't recall.
Frank the Crank, Fit to Lead.
Yes, I know Frank the Crank.
Mhm.
I have no approving authority. The expenditure authority is the Secretary of Finance.
The question was, did you direct the Bank of Saipan to contract with any of these companies?
I don't recall.
What about promotional videos? Did you write scripts for promotional videos for Boost?
I don't recall. I would probably have provided input, but I don't recall taking ownership over any script that was made manifest in the video. I don't recall.
What hat were you wearing when you wrote scripts for promotional Boost videos?
I was a member of the panel of the Boost program.
You mean the review panelist?
Yes, ma'am.
So your role is growing now. It's not just reviewing applications. As a review panelist, you also wrote video scripts for Boost promotions.
I probably was solicited my input, but again, I have no authority on anything relative to the administration or expenses of the Boost program.
Okay. Well, let's refresh your memory then. Cam, would you please pull up one of the exhibits from part 8? Guess we'll start with the Tinian promotional video. Um, yeah. So this is a text message from Mr. Will Castro on October 21st, 2022 at 9:51 a.m. Just read into the record. Good morning, Ray Boost. Um, Joe Mesa will serve as the primary POC for the Boost presentations this morning. The team arrives between 11:15 and 11:30 a.m. today and will proceed to meet with you. This is the Bank of Saipan, to Ms. Gina de Leon Guerrero, to ensure all systems are green light go for the Gov. Goal: capture the moment of the issuance of checks to Tinian residents. Objectives: shots. 1. Gov coming out of the airport terminal. 2. Gov coming into the mayor's conference room and greeting mayor and staff. Smiles and hugs, please. 3. Gov sitting and briefing everyone on what's to happen. 3A, what Boost is. 3B, this is the second issuance to Tinian, more to follow. Partial issuances for round 1. 3C, no applications have been rejected. Inquiries are to go to Bank of Saipan. 4. Gov greeting the awardee, one at a time. No officials, an official photo other than Gov. 4A, all other friends, partners of Boost may be in secondary photos and videos. Example, mayor, representatives, senators, etc. 5, do same for the recipients. 6, other officials may speak after Gov addresses everyone, please. This makes for video editing. 6A, order of speaking upon issuance. 1, Gov. 2, awardee. Pause. 3, other officials as approved by Gov. Note to Bernie Mayor's team. Please notify friends, partners of Boost, Senate President Jude, Senator Carl, Senator Cruz, Representative San Nicolas, Mayor Aldon, Chairman Joe. Mr. Castro, what hat were you wearing when you directed for this video and this whole event at the Intinian?
Thank you for the questions. First of all, those are good ideas that I put forward. For the record, I was not there, and for the record, the appointing authority was present. Um, I don't know, recall what role I was playing. I was simply proffering recommendations on how best to proceed for this particular, whether they executed it as listed here. I don't know. I wasn't there. And there are many times when I've put forward ideas and either they didn't execute at all or they, yep. So I can't recall what role I was in. I was putting some ideas on
Were you
paper.
wearing the hat of the review panelist for Boost, or were you wearing the hat of the chief of staff, or were you wearing the hat of the governor's campaign manager?
At no time, at no time have I acted in the capacity associated with a campaign when reviewing or acting for the Boost program. As a matter of fact, at no time in any discussions I've been a part of have we discussed party affiliation, religious association.
Mr. Castro, for this video, what hat were you wearing?
I don't know. I just sent an email from my official email.
But you would agree that you weren't merely reviewing an application and acting in your role as a strictly as a review panelist for Boost, right? I mean, this is you're giving directions. You wrote a script. You told who to be there and what should be in the shot, right?
Yes, the record reflects that I put forward some ideas that I think would guide the event.
But you don't recall what hat you were wearing when you did that?
Either hat was recommendatory. It was a recommendation in nature.
Okay. Well, how about this? Let's go to another script. Could we go to page 25 of this part, Cam? You know Mr. Brad Cravoy. Page 25.
I'm sorry, Mr. Who?
Brad Cravoy.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Who is Brad Cravoy? Briefly.
Well, first of all, for the record, he's not my friend, and I don't have a business association with him. I met him.
Who is he, Mr. Castro?
I understand him to be a film producer.
Is he a Boost grant recipient?
Not to the best of my knowledge.
Is he a Boost contractor?
Not to the best of my knowledge.
So he hasn't received any funds from the Boost program?
Not to the best of my knowledge.
Okay. Cam, if you could scroll up just a little bit more. Okay, so this is a text message to Karen from the Bank of Saipan. November 22nd, 2022. Will Castro. Karen, is it Bart Krivoy or Brad Krivoy?
I couldn't tell you, ma'am.
Okay,
I
so
don't know.
Krivoy is a huge deal. 1.2 billion is a shiny number to move quickly to accommodate. He is scheduled to come to the Bank of Saipan to open an account. I highly recommend one, that senior management welcome him with open arms. Oh, there we go. Senior management welcome him with open arms as the government is doing to close the deal on his investments in the CNMI, and two, that local media be present to cover this historic move for the CNMI and Bank of Saipan, smiling emoji. This is marketing money for Bank of Saipan at no real expense to Bank of Saipan. Oh, and then you correct yourself. It's Brad Krivoy. What hat were you wearing, Mr. Castro, when you sent this message?
I don't recall. Uh, I certainly didn't sign off as chief of staff, or I was merely putting forward an idea that I think would benefit the community.
The benefit the Bank of Saipan.
Actually, in that instance, there would probably be some benefit to them, but this was bigger than the bank.
This is marketing money for Bank of Saipan at no expense to Bank of Saipan. Of
Well,
course, this would have benefited Bank of Saipan.
and the Commonwealth. So the if what little I know about Mr. Cravoy is that he's publicly stated his intention to invest millions in the Commonwealth and open up a film industry. From what I understand, he's anticipating to shoot 3 to 5 movies in the CNMI. I think that's hugely promising
But that's
for.
not the question, Mr. Castro. So you were not doing this as a boost review panelist, is that correct?
I didn't say that. So I don't know which I didn't
Were
sign
you
off in
wearing the
either
chief of
capacity.
staff hat? Was this at the governor's direction? What was that about?
No, it was putting an idea to Karen. Could perhaps I was acting on my own volition, proffering another idea about how best to benefit the community.
Maybe
That's
as
it. It was simply
a friend of the Bank of Saipan?
no, as
No.
someone that I think would see the merit behind a highly rated movie producer to
Mhm.
invest in the Commonwealth. And
1.2 billion is a lot of money.
it is, ma'am. And if I could state for the record, quote, I highly recommend. It's
Uh-huh.
simply a recommendation.
Okay, let's go to page. Let's go to the other page where the next script appears. Cam, I believe that is page 68. Yeah. Okay. So on November 22nd, 2022, Will Castro, program, 3 p.m. 1. Brad is to walk into bank and line up like a normal patron. 2. He will be received by a teller and then senior management will take him into conference room. Bank. Half a day. May I take the next person, please? Brad. Hi, I'm Brad Kravoy, and I'd like to open a bank account with your bank. Bank then calls for senior management. They ask what kind of account, then escort him into private conference room. 3. Initiate paperwork. Roll video and photos throughout. 4. Once signed docs for ceremonial purposes, then the whole team should surround him and clap loudly and with so much happiness. 5. Then he can step out into open area and make a statement. I am truly committed to doing great things in the CNMI, and now, after the driver's license and bank account, I can say I invested. Thank you, Governor Torres and the CNMI government for the great customer service. Thank you to Bank of Saipan for a warm welcome and great service. Thank you to the people of the CNMI. Let's do great things together. This was a message directed to Gina De Leon Guerrero of the bank. Mr. Castro, what hat were you wearing when you wrote this script?
Again, Congresswoman, I think these are great ideas. For the record, I don't think they did any of that. Just to be clear, I don't know what
There
role I
was
was.
definitely a promotion of him opening up a bank account. It was front page news with a big picture.
Probably was, but I don't think they executed any of my ideas that I recommended.
But what hat were you wearing when you sent
I
this recommendation?
I don't know what hat I wore.
Chief of staff,
I don't recall.
campaign manager,
I don't recall.
boost panelist.
I don't recall.
How can you not recall that? You have an excellent memory.
Sometimes I just proffer an idea as a concerned citizen. Perhaps it was that, but I don't recall. I can't tell you where I was standing. If
Do
I
you
was
remember writing this?
uh, not all of that, but it's clear that that came in 11/22/12:51, 3 p.m.
you don't remember writing it.
I send many messages out, ma'am. I don't recall. But thank you for the evidence.
So you had other hats and other roles, not strictly limited to strictly reviewing boost grant applications, right? What else did you do? Did you directly help any individuals write their boost grant applications?
I don't recall.
You don't recall.
Technical assistance.
You can't say yes or no that you've never helped any individual applicant write their application.
I recall participating in providing technical assistance,
What does that mean?
providing guidance on what they may or may not want to include. I've done this on site with other organizations like SBDC, um, Mango. When you sit down with a constituent and they're trying to help write out their mission statement.
So you yourself sat down with individual applicants and helped them write their applications?
I've sat to the best. I don't recall specific instances, ma'am, but
But yes, you did.
I don't recall specific instances, but I believe that would be possible.
Mm-hmm. And did you at any time think that there may possibly be a conflict with helping people write boost grant applications while you were also on the other side reviewing boost grant applications?
I will state again publicly and for the record that I have no conflicts of interest relative to the boost program.
Even if you help somebody write their application?
I have no conflicts of interest relative to the boost program.
And did you directly help any individual applicants write any other part of their boost application, such as their business plan?
I don't recall specifically.
But you may have.
It's possible.
And you saw no conflict at all with helping somebody write a business plan while they were on the other side going to be giving you their application to review?
I have no conflicts of interest relative to the boost program.
Did you at any time ever tell individual applicants what to ask for, how much to apply for?
I don't recall.
How can you not recall that?
I have conversations with people all the time on a number of ideas and thoughts, and whether they're asking about a business plan or a date, a deadline, I don't recall.
Mm-hmm. I just have a couple more questions, chairs, on this line. Mr. Castro, the records show that the Boost program administrator received applications for funding that exceeded the total amount of funding available well before the third and final extension for applications. And in the end, as you know, the program received thousands of applications totaling over $300 million in requests. Whose idea was it to keep extending the deadline? There was a first deadline in September, right? And then the other one in October, and another one in November, and then in December. Whose idea was that?
I don't know whose sole idea it was, ma'am.
Who are the multiple people who had that idea then?
I don't recall.
You can't recall whose idea it was to continually extend the deadline?
What I do know to be fact is that the expenditure authority is the Secretary of the Department of Finance, and the ultimate authority is the Governor of the Commonwealth, and that the administrator for the Boost program with these specified funds is the Bank of Saipan, all of whom are authorized to make that decision, I believe.
Ultimately, who made that decision?
I don't recall.
Was it the governor?
I don't recall, ma'am.
So would the best person be the governor then to ask whose idea that was?
That's up to you, ma'am. There's the administrator and the expenditure authority you could probably turn to as well.
But I suppose if none of them can recall that, then I guess the buck stops with the governor, right? Okay. Last set of questions for this round. Can you help us understand why there are different boost guidelines drafted for, quote, public consumption versus internal use?
I don't recall, but the administrator, I know that I take my guidance from the Department of Finance as guided by the U.S. Department of Treasury and the Bank of Saipan, who is the administrator of the Boost program.
It appears from a lot of the communications, though, that the Bank of Saipan had a pretty significant hand in drafting the guidelines. Would you agree with that?
Yes, ma'am.
This is even before they were officially the administrator even of the program. They were drafting those guidelines and submitting drafts to you for review and approval. Whose idea was it to withhold from the public the caps on total awards that people may apply for?
I don't recall, ma'am.
Whose idea was it to withhold from the public the different types of buckets for grants and the allocations of funds for each of those buckets?
I don't recall.
Can you help us understand why that was even withheld from the public?
I can't recall.
In all your experience with grant applications, Mr. Castro, it's such a these are basic types of information. How much money is available? What is the cap on a grant that people can apply for?
My role, Congresswoman, is to review the grant applications.
You did more than that, Mr. Castro. More than just review. Do you see why it would be problematic? At least can you acknowledge that? Why it would be problematic not to tell potential applicants how much to apply for and how much is available?
I'm here to answer questions of fact.
That is a factual question, Mr. Castro. Do you see why that would be a problem in the administration of this grant and the equitable distribution of funds?
Which part is problematic?
To not tell people how much they could apply for and what the total amount is available. It's a yes or no question.
What, could you restate the question?
Do you see why it would be a problem for the fair and equitable distribution of public funds to not tell people how much they can apply for and how much is available?
I believe to the best of my recollection, there was a published amount for the original Boost program.
No, there was not.
I don't necessarily agree with you, but I'll just go ahead and state that for the record. That's what I believe to be true. I think earlier testimony was anywhere between 10 to 12 million. I could be wrong, and I stand corrected because
it was a range of numbers that changed. 6 million, 10 to 12 million, 17 million, possibly more.
So
there was never a clear amount. And the allocations for each of the buckets, what's very clear was the decision not to release that to the public.
To the second question about not telling people how much they could apply for, I can't speak for the panel, but I can tell you this. Each individual entity, whether a business or a nonprofit, their needs vary. It depends on the need of, in this case, a small business. Some businesses, probably in one example without naming them, would need a commercial cutter for large pieces of meat. In another instance, they would need an oven for their pizza extension.
Mr. Castro.
Ma'am, could I finish it?
No.
Because you're asking me a question.
We've heard this about the meat cutter part before.
So I don't agree.
It's a yes or no question. Do you
don't
at least acknowledge that it is problematic to
No.
not release the total caps? It's yes or no.
No, I do not believe we should cap individual businesses on how much they are requesting. That is
But there was a cap that was only for internal use. It was $499,999.99 for the incubator grants. It was $500,000 for the Nayanamu grants. You would know this as a review panelist, right? That isn't the guidance that you were supposedly following.
May I?
There were caps for internal use, and your Boost website also says that those caps are being withheld so that people wouldn't all ask for the total amount. But you see why it's a problem. Whose idea was it to provide Boost grants to banks?
I don't know.
Was it Bank of Saipan?
And for the record, I don't know.
The Boost guidelines in the records show that up to $2 million would be available to banks the highest amount that would be allocated to any of the buckets. Whose idea was that?
I don't know.
Did any other bank apply for a boost grant?
I am not aware of any other bank that applied.
Did any other bank even know that they could apply for a boost grant?
I don't know.
Are you aware that Bank of Saipan submitted their own boost application to themselves?
I'm aware that they were approved for a boost grant award.
Mm-hmm. Yes, they did. And they submitted it to themselves to screen and forward for review to the review panel. You don't see that as problematic in any way.
I rely on the Department of Finance's guidance in
Yes,
collaboration
we've
with the
heard that.
United States Department of the Treasury to ensure compliance with all applicable
you.
rules and regulations.
I yield, Mr. Chairman.